Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalat, wassalam ala rasulillah. My name is Jimmy E. Jones. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Islamic Seminary of America, and welcome to another in our series of TISA Talks. What you see on the screen is actually in response to the situation that many of us are going through right now. Quite frankly, I'm tired of looking at the same four walls over the past 4 weeks, because most of us are sheltering in place. But what this makes me think about is that about 1400 years ago, our beloved Prophet ﷺ made a momentous hijrah from Mecca to Medina. And during that time, two things come to mind that focus on this particular flyer here, is that he proved that he was, in his leadership, he was both synergistic and visionary. Synergistic in the sense that he reached out both within his own community and outside of the community in order to get help for doing what he did. And I don't want to go long here, but the point is that he obviously had Muslims helping him, but for a guy, there was a non-Muslim. And indeed, the people who were asking him to come were largely non-Muslims. He was also visionary in the sense that he was brilliant in how he brought the Muhajirin and the Ansar together. And so the Center for Ethical and Effective Organizational Leadership, and let's just note, he was coming out of a very serious crisis time, the year of woe, the loss of his beloved Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, his uncle Abu Bakr, who protected him. And so we have a model of a crisis leadership there. And so the Center for Ethical and Effective Organizational Leadership, which we are launching, and we'll talk about later on, our hope is to bring back that synergy and the vision that our beloved Prophet ﷺ emulated. We'll talk about that later, inshallah. So the business before us is Ramadan, spiritual and physical health. It's one of our series of TISA Talks. And we have two distinguished guests this afternoon. One is our Dean of Academic Affairs and a member of our faculty, Dr. Yasir Qadhi. For many people, it needs no introduction. And also a person who, for many people, needs no introduction is Mubaraka Ibrahim, who is the founder and the CEO of Muslimah, also business entrepreneur, life coach, and all around, mashallah, busy Muslim in the community, alhamdulillah, who is a person who can really help us thinking about the whole issue of physical health as it relates to Ramadan. And so I have a brief talk. I want to give Islamic 101, what I call Islam 101, because there are some people who are joining us who are not familiar with our deen, I've noticed from the list. And I just want to mention that we're co-sponsored by the Association of Muslim Chaplains, Muslimah, also by Muslim Endorsement Council, and of course, the Islamic Seminary of America. So Ramadan, spiritual and physical health. I usually make 3 points. So 3 Islam 101 points to open this discussion is 1, the Gregorian dates change every year. That is, we go by the Gregorian calendar, January, February, March, April, and so forth. And so for Ramadan, for those of you who are new to the Islamic community, these dates change every year. Number 2, a lot of human beings are doing this thing, although in the United States, we are a minority. There are many places on the earth where we're not. And number 3, the obvious point, the whole point of this webinar is that Ramadan has multiple benefits. And this is taken from an article called Muslim Patients in Ramadan, a review for primary care physicians from the Avicenna Journal. And inshallah, we'll be posting this video on our YouTube. You can find it. You'll find that citation there if you want it, inshallah. I've been reminded by my development person, that Brother Tariq Yunus, that if anybody wants to give to this effort, it's very hard to raise money during this time, that he's by the phone at 214-484-1309. But obviously this is free, you don't have to give, but if you're so inclined, he's by the phone at 214-484-1309. So let's go to the first point. The Gregorian dates change every year. Fasting is in the 9th Islamic month of Ramadan is one of the 5 fundamental pillars of Islam. We follow a lunar, not a solar calendar. The Gregorian calendar is a solar calendar, which is 364 days. Our calendar is 355. Therefore, Ramadan moves earlier by 10 days, which, for people outside our community, they find, what are these people doing? They did it a different month last year. And therefore, we go through all 4 seasons, and resulting in variations in the number of fasting hours. And I want to tell you, it encourages what we call mature adaptability. The second thing is that a lot of human beings on the earth, inshallah, within the next 2 days will be doing this. According to the Pew Research Center, they estimated that 23% of the world population, about 1.6 billion, that was 2010. Muslims, we like to have babies. I'm sure there are more of us than that. And so therefore, millions of Muslim adults worldwide are engaged, millions worldwide are engaged, whole cities, whole countries, whole villages, whole communities are engaged in this fast. So even though it looks like a minority thing in this country, just understand that this is a major effort by people worldwide. The third point is Ramadan has multiple benefits, and we'll hear from our speakers talking about this today. Fasting Ramadan improves spiritual and physical health. The main purpose of fasting during the month is to attain righteousness. Taqtakun is the Arabic word. Some other benefits include strengthening the believer's relationship with Allah, or the Creator, having self-reflection, appreciation of Allah's blessings, and there are many, many benefits that you'll hear in the course of this discussion, inshallah, God willing, as we say. And so the key ayat of the Quran believes, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam. It says, the meaning of which, O you who believe, fasting is prescribed to you as it was prescribed to those before you, that you may learn taqtakun. And so this is an order, our understanding, this is an order from our Creator. And mashallah, we are trying to help other people in our community focus on the spiritual and the physical benefits of it. Just want to remind you that we have summer courses. You can just go to our website. I won't do a commercial now. You'll see that our conference at Yale University is still postponed because we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. The final thing is to tell you about our response to the pandemic is to have these regional workshops aimed at strengthening Muslim organizations in the wake of the pandemic. We're calling the post-pandemic professional and organization development workshops, which we intend to have throughout the country. And if you're interested in attending one of these workshops, we're talking October forward, you'll see our website throughout, and you can just reach out to us, inshallah. So now to our guests. As I said before, we have some very distinguished guests, and I've asked them just to share with us some of their knowledge on the spiritual and physical aspects of Ramadan. So the first question is, in your view, and either of you can start off, what is the most important thing that people should remember when it comes to spiritual or physical health during Ramadan? Either of you, who wants to start?
I'll let Sheikh Yasir start.
I was going to say, I'll let you start. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam wa rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa lahama ba'd. I would remind myself and the viewers that the goal of Ramadan is not merely to abstain from food and drink. I think the main point that I would like to remind ourselves is that there is a higher spiritual goal. And the purpose of abstaining from food and drink is to get to that higher goal. A lot of times Muslims get so engrossed in just the abstainment of food and drink that they forget that that is a means to a higher end. As our Prophet ﷺ said, whoever doesn't abandon saying false things and doing evil things while they're fasting, Allah has no need for that person to have abandoned his food and his drink. So my reminder is that there is a higher purpose, and the Quran tells us that higher purpose, and that higher purpose is to inculcate God consciousness, or taqwa. That is my reminder for the main purpose of the month of Ramadan, spiritually speaking.
Okay. Mubarak?
I think that for me, what I like to remind people about as far as the physical benefits of Ramadan is I always try to remind myself and everyone else that physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is intertwined. The weakness of one weakens them all, and the strengthening of one strengthens them all. The physical aspect of Ramadan is just not about suffering and not being able to eat. There are a lot of physical benefits that fasting provides, and being aware of those and trying to really use them to our advantage, because the more that we can really focus on making sure that we're eating the right things when we are eating, and that it's going to make the fast itself easier, and it's going to give us more physical energy and motivation to do the ibadah that we have to do in the evening, because it's all tied together. If you're overeating at iftar and you're eating a whole bunch of the wrong things, then you're going to be tired. You're not going to have the energy to do your taraweeh or to do your late night worship. So, or even get up for suhoor, right? How many times do we overeat at iftar and then you end up fasting for 24 hours because you overslept for suhoor? So really taking advantage of knowing that that the physical aspect of Ramadan is not just suffering, it is a lot of physical benefits, because Islam, this is really such an example to me of how Islam is such a complete religion. It's not just about spirituality, that Allah has given us things that's built into our religion to even benefit us physically.
Okay. So both of you were born Muslims, mashallah. What, when you look around you and look at your colleagues, Muslims, men and women in your cohort, the people that you associate with, what is the most common misconception that you think people have about the month of Ramadan amongst us?
Why don't you begin this time?
Okay. I think one of the most, so in terms of physical health, one of the most common misconceptions of Ramadan is that you're going to lose weight, to be completely honest. And we've been doing this our whole life, but still everyone says at the end of the month, well, I thought I was going to lose more weight than I did. Right? It is definitely the most common misconception. And I think that the way that we really combat that is, one, knowing that the physical benefits is beyond just weight loss. And not losing weight is really a testament to really how you actually ate during the month, not just how you thought you ate.
Yeah, but you're also a nutritionist specialist. Could you say something about why people don't lose weight?
The reason why people don't lose weight is because they try to make up for the entire day after they break fast, right? So they break their fast and the meals are much larger than they would normally eat. They eat later into the night, which actually ends up being more calories than they would eat, because then they're sleeping on a full stomach and they're not burning off the calories, right? We would love to say, hey, well, making salah is physical movement, so it's a form of exercise. Not the type of exercise you need to burn the calories off. It's more of a spiritual exercise than a physical exercise. Yeah. So that's really the main reason, is the amount of food that people are eating in iftar and the food choices that people are eating in iftar, which I think that one of the silver linings of us being in the pandemic or expecting a pandemic quarantine Ramadan is, I think one of the mercies is that all the excuses of eating junk and, oh, I was at iftar and it was a buffet and it was all these things to choose from, is going to be completely removed. I have been telling people that I'm reminded that Allah says, with every difficulty there is ease. The ease that I see in the health realm for this is that now you have complete control over your diet during this month. There's no, I was at my friend's house and she gave me 3 different choices of cake, or we went to the masjid for iftar. You can choose to eat in a healthy, nutritious way, and you are in complete control. So I'm looking forward to people taking advantage of the amount of control that they will have over their food this year.
It sounds like your famous boot camps, no excuses, right? Before we go to Dean Yasir, or just one more thing. So how do you flip that? So what is the advice that you would, what is the advice you would give to people and how to combat this misconception?
So the how to combat it is to, one, take some of the tips that I'll give you today and knowledge and continue research on some of the physical benefits of fast. But on a practical level, what you need to do is when you're breaking your fast, you need to really plan out to make sure that you're having the things that are going to be nutrient dense, and go back to kind of like when you was a kid, when your parents made you eat your vegetables first. Fill yourself up on the nutrient dense things on your plate, and then you will have less room. Like, I'm not unrealistic and gonna say, you know, don't eat any cakes and cookies for the entire month.
Or bean pie.
But if you can reduce those, it's going to be of greater benefit. If you can reduce the amount of carbohydrates that you're eating, is going to be of a greater benefit, right? You don't need pasta and garlic bread. You can just have the pasta, right? You need to reduce the amount. And the reason why I say that is because one of the biggest problems that we have in general as a world population is that we consume way too much sugar and simple carbohydrates that turn into sugar. So the first thing, my first tip would be really focus on the nutrient dense foods that you have. And then the second thing would be make sure that you're staying properly hydrated. One of the misconceptions we have is that, oh, I break fast and I'm so starving, I can't control myself. But the body interprets dehydration as hunger initially. So if you can make sure that you're drinking well when you're breaking your fast, before you're actually consuming your meal, you'll actually, one, be partly full and finish and start that sunnah of 1/3 liquid. And then you'll also eat less, and your body will then be able to interpret food as I need these nutrients, as opposed to I'm thirsty and I'm trying to get liquid any way that I can.
Okay, so water, veggies, and then whatever else is left. Okay, Dr. Yasir, common misconception.
I think the most common misconception is that it's simply impossible for the average human being to live without food and drink for 14 hours, 15 hours a day. Everybody's like, I could never do that. And they just don't know because they've never tried. It's actually, as we all know as Muslims, and actually, you know, Dr. Jones, you as a convert, you are even more aware than people like us. Like, it's actually, we were born doing it. It's like literally as long as I can remember, 6 years old was my first fast. And it's not a problem. Like, it's as if, you know, psychologically, we will, of course, spiritually say, Allah blesses you too. So the human body is really amazing. It can adapt very easily. In fact, as we all know, the first day we have breakfast after the 30 days of Ramadan, even a small amount of food that we have at like 7, 8, 9 a.m., we feel so stuffed and bloated for the rest of the day. So I think the most common misconception is how difficult the fast is. In fact, once you get in the swing of it, within 2-3 days, it feels so natural and so doable, even in the summer months. I mean, it's a bit of a, you know, dry throat at the end of the day, but it's not life-threatening in any sense of the term.
Yeah, just to follow up on that a bit, as a convert, when I came in, mashallah, in 1979, 80 or so, I thought the fast was, they didn't have this show though, but was a survivor show, if you know what I mean. I thought, well, the more I suffered, the better the benefit. I'm talking about me. I don't know about other people out there. That's it. And it was in August, mashallah. It was August. So it was like very long, hot days. And I knew I was doing something because the days were long. And then we got to Tarawih, and I was just exhausted by the end of the day. I mean, it took me years to disabuse myself of that notion that if I wasn't suffering or pushing myself to the limit, that it wasn't a good Ramadan. My guess is there's some other converts out there that think that. So I'll turn it into a question for both of you. Do we have to feel like we're pushing ourselves to the limit in terms of, I mean, in terms of everything, in terms of ibadah, because Tarawih, it's over like midnight, right? When people finish, and then Fajr is like 4 o'clock in the morning. So is this necessary that we feel sleep deprived, because you're going to feel a little bit sleep deprived, and feel that we're pushed to our limit in terms of both our ibadah and also getting the food and the drink that we need? Either one of you.
I'll let you start, Sheikh Yasir.
I mean, is it necessary? That's a very big word. No, it's not obligatory. It's not necessary. Is it something that is encouraged? I would say within a reasonable limit, then yes, definitely. We want to exert ourselves to a reasonable limit, not an unreasonable one. We don't want to harm our daily routine to the point of not functioning at work properly, to the point of having headaches. That's not, Allah does not require us to do that, but to cut back on the luxuries, to feel a little bit of just pain and suffering that's within the norms of just sacrificing for the sake of Allah, definitely, because we have in the tradition that on the Day of Judgment, the Quran is going to come and say that, oh Allah, I deprived him of the sleep that he wanted, the sweetness of that sleep. He wanted to sleep longer. Instead of sleeping 8 hours, it's perfectly fine to sleep 6 hours, 5 hours even. I mean, if you're able to. People are different, and you can function, maybe take a 20-minute nap in the daytime, and you can function. Most human beings can easily function on lesser than 8 hours of sleep, unless you're a growing child. So little bit, yes, but not to the point of it impeding your functional schedule as a worker, as a human being, as a parent, whatever that else might be.
Mubaraka?
So I think that this is really a question of mind over matter. And I am of a huge belief that sometimes we convince ourselves that things are much more difficult than they are. I often say that when the hunger that we feel when we're fasting, and I coach people through intermittent fasting outside of Ramadan, and I tell them that hunger is a mental state. Starvation is a physical state, but hunger is a mental state. It is, most people are hungry because they're like, well, I would be eating breakfast right now. I would be eating lunch right now. Oh, well, I have to suffer because, I am supposed to feel like the starving children in Africa in Ramadan, which I'm still trying to figure out where we get that from. But, and so we convince ourselves that we have to have this long suffering state. I think that fasting is a completely natural state, right? The fact that we eat so often throughout the day is a luxury of being in modern times. Even before we have refrigerators, we can be eating 3 meals a day, right? Yeah, and people all over the world who don't have the luxuries that we have don't eat 3 meals a day. In fact, our body functions better off of less. One of the things about the fast itself is, especially where we are in modern society, is that it's really about shifting our mental and cultural idea of what fasting is and what it does. So the physical benefits of fasting is there so that you actually can optimize your health. It's not there so that you can suffer. When we fast, and it's really interesting to me when I really connect what what we have to do as far as ibadah, and then what's happening to our body on a physiological level. So one of the benefits of fasting is that it actually it gives you better insulin sensitivity. This is really important for people who are diabetic or pre-diabetic. And one of the other things about not getting enough sleep is it actually—
Mubaraka, you're going to have to unpack insulin sensitivity for most.
Okay, so insulin sensitivity is the way that your body can manage sugar mostly in the form of carbohydrates when it comes into your body, whether or not it's able to shuffle it to the cells that needs it, right? So one of the things about not getting enough sleep, it actually decreases that. But the beautiful thing about the fast is that it balances out, because once you are not getting enough sleep, then Allah creates this condition physiologically in your day from the fast that actually completely balances that out. Another benefit of the fast is that it decreases high blood pressure. It decreases blood lipid cholesterol levels. So if you have high cholesterol, I recently over the summer last summer, I went to a conference on intermittent fasting and ketogenic eating. And they had this researcher at the conference, and she was like, you know, when we started researching intermittent fasting, the thing that got us to research it is that all of our Muslim clients would come off of their medications for the whole month of Ramadan. And then we would have to give it back to them at the end of the month. So them as non-Muslim doctors and researchers, they were astounded at the physical benefits of clients who had diabetes, who had high blood pressure, that literally needed no medication for the entire month of fasting. When you know you have these benefits that's within the fast, then you have to take advantage of them, and don't reverse it by, at the end of the month, just abandoning the fast altogether until next Ramadan. At the end of the month, just going back to unhealthy eating habits, or even doing it at iftar, right? So these are great benefits of fast that we now know that all of science is researching and studying and seeing that it's really beneficial on the physiological level. That Allah, the way that I see it is that when this month, Allah has not just put in a method for us to be restored on a spiritual level, but also for us to be restored on a physical level, and because of all of the physiological benefits of the month.
All right, to the folks watching, you're going to get your chance to get in on this, and within the next 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to start taking your questions. I just want to ask 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll open up to the folks who are watching. Just sort of a bridge to what Dean Yasir and Mubaraka were saying is that I changed my mind about it. You know, I didn't think it had to be so hard, but I used to say when I speak to interfaith groups that Muslims don't have nuns and priests. In other words, generally speaking, because there's always outliers for every religious group. We don't have nuns and priests. In other words, people don't go to a convent and renounce the world, renounce God, renounce celibacy, generally speaking, amongst the Muslims. But during the month of Ramadan, I mean, what we do is similar in the sense that nuns and priests say they do it to please God, that the focus is on God. And that the beauty of this month, I'm just building off what both of you said, is that we flip the script. Is that I know about you, I'm too busy. My wife will tell you I'm just too busy doing this, that, and the other. But Ramadan forces me to slow down and focus on my Creator, and that to me is extremely important. And if you're not slowing down and focusing on your Creator, and I think this is where Dean Yasir made the point early on, then there's a problem. If you're still doing everything else, if your mind is occupied, your time is occupied with everything else that you do normally in the rest of the day. And the other analogy is, for me, is like boot camp, training camp. That is, it gets you ready for the real world, because the fabra, the hilm, the things that you need in order to navigate this world are cultivated during the month of Ramadan. Okay, another question for you, and then I think maybe after that we'll go to questions from the people who are watching. What role, if any, do you think gender differences play in the spiritual or physical health during Ramadan? Either one of you.
I think that gender plays a big role in the way that we actually observe the month. So one of the things about of course, I'm going to speak from the female perspective, is that the women tend to have greater domestic responsibilities, and really burden ourselves with even more than we would normally do during this month. And for many of us, we really justify it by saying, well, I'm getting blessings if I'm feeding my family too. I'm getting blessings but the traditional ibadah like salah and reading Quran, and we will forego that. And I encourage women not to forego it. Don't forego that which you know that Allah loves the most, which is salah, right? Don't forego the actual sunnah of reading the Quran. There's ways for you to schedule your day and plan your day and divvy up the responsibility. Again, another silver lining to me having a pandemic Ramadan. Everybody's home. Everybody can help with chores. You're not stuck with doing everything while the kids are at school or the husband is at work. You can really break it up so that everybody can contribute, and you can actually do more ibadah yourself. The second thing, which is kind of like the flip side of that, is because the women are normally the ones who are responsible for the cooking and for the feeding of the family, on a health aspect, you can really focus on making sure that your family are eating nutrient-dense, healthful meals, that you're all going to be able to, inshallah, increase your ibadah and make your fast more beneficial throughout the whole month, because what you're eating is going to be directly related to how you're feeling and being able to have energy to do all of the things and all of those extra things that we want to do, right? It's really hard to push yourself to do the extra Quran reading and the extra salah at night if you're absolutely exhausted after you just got finished eating a full 4-course meal and dessert, right? And you're super tired afterwards. If you reduce the amount of food that you're eating, if you reduce the sweets and the sugars and the carbohydrates, then you will have more energy for you to engage in those things. Not just more physical energy, but also more mental focus. That's a really important part, right? Brain fog is something that people experience during this month. I'm feeling really lethargic. I'm tired. After about the first week, you're going to get into the groove of things. Your body is going to adjust. And if you're continuing to take on those healthy eating habits for yourself and your family, the rest of the month will be really a lot easier for you to get through your days, for you to do your ibadah at night. So for women, I think that we can, one, take a leadership in the health of our family during this month, but also, two, make sure that we divvy out some of those responsibilities so that we can have time we can focus on the actual sunnah ibadahs that is a part of this month.
Dr. Yasir.
So I would say that we need to differentiate the theological from the cultural. It's very accurate to say that theologically speaking, there is no difference between the genders when it comes to their opportunities to come closer to Allah, when it comes to the rewards they can get during this month, when it comes to their ibadat. That is theological, and it's nice to preach that. It's not enough just to preach it without pointing out that culturally, as Sister Mubaraka said, that a lot of times people don't live up to that ideal, and that it is true that our women folk get burdened with undue amount of tasks. And perhaps if in those families where the husband is working and the wife isn't, perhaps that is understandable. But when both partners are working, then obviously there should be a healthy compromise between the both of them. As we're all aware, theoretically, it is not obligatory for the wife to service the husband in these types of routines and chores. If she does so, it's an act of worship. But if he does so, it is also an act of worship. So we have to balance between the ideals of theology, which says that both genders are equally important. They both have the opportunities to worship Allah. They're both supposed to be doing the rituals. And then practically speaking, or culturally speaking, it is true that one of the two has been given an undue burden. And I would like to say that especially this Ramadan, when we're all under lockdown, husbands that traditionally work really don't have the excuse of saying, I don't have enough time. Generally speaking, all of us do have a little bit more time at home. And so all I'm saying is to both is to try to be reasonable and try to help out more than, especially to the ones that wouldn't help out enough last year's, that this year is the time to help out a little bit more as much as possible. And that too will be an act of worship, inshallah ta'ala.
Just to follow up on that. So Is there anything in particular, Dr. Yasir, that you would say to us brothers in particular about Ramadan and how we can be helpful to the women? And it's not just the white, but the women in our household, to have them fulfill the obligatory duties as well as the extra ibadat.
I think we can kill two birds with one stone in this regard by eating healthy and not eating 2 or 3 heavy meals. The whole point of Ramadan is really to have a spiritual and a physical reiteration, a rebirth. And I guess this Ramadan is one of the best Ramadans where we can actually sit down and plan a healthy meal plan rather than eating fatty foods and requiring, our significant others, typically the wives, to be extra in the kitchen. I think this is the ideal Ramadan where we're like, you know what, let's have a light meal. I'll help you out for this. And then maybe one heavy meal, maybe for the suhoor or whatever. Like, in other words, plan to actually have a healthier diet, and plan also to share responsibilities in the household this year. And also to the brothers in particular, realize that, we feel so deprived this year for not going to Ramadan in the masjids. For some of our sisters, that is a norm for a number of years, when they're not going to be able to leave their kids, or, they might not be able to go to the masjid because the masjid doesn't have female facilities there. So we are experiencing for the first time what many of our sisters have intermittently, had to face with over, the period of their lifetimes. So maybe appreciate more, some of the stuff that they've been doing for us for the last, for as long as we've been on this earth, basically.
Yeah, I'm hearing some messages that are coming through loud and clear from both of you. First of all, plan. I tell my family and anybody who listen that Ramadan is not a surprise. We can figure out within 1 or 2 days when it's going to be. It's not off by a week, and so therefore we can plan our time. We can plan our menu. We can get the things, and it's tougher, but we in fact can plan those things. And I think make intention to focus on pleasing Allah Ta'ala. So we have some questions, and the first one has to be for Sister Mubaraka. The first question is, what can one following a ketogenic diet do to maintain hydration and health during Ramadan fast?
So a ketogenic diet, for people who are wondering, it is the type of diet that I follow, that I teach people. It is a high-fat, low-carb, moderate protein diet. And I say for people who are following a ketogenic diet, just keep doing what you're doing. It is the ideal way for us to take advantage of this month. We know that it gives us more energy, more mental clarity, more focus. So continue to do what you normally do. And my hydration tips would be really for everybody, whether or not you're following a ketogenic diet or not. So I have a specific hydration schedule that I recommend that people do during Ramadan. One of the misconceptions about people trying to stay hydrated is they actually drink too much water at one time. Our bodies do not have the ability to actually hold and absorb more than about 20 ounces of water every hour. So if you sit down and you're drinking 32 ounces, I know you might be really, really thirsty. The reason why you have to go to the bathroom right away is because your muscles and your organs simply cannot absorb that much water within a reasonable amount of time. So it pushes it straight through your kidneys and to your bladder, right? It goes right through. And so you have to go to the bathroom a lot. But what that does is it also makes you less efficient in using the water that you're drinking. So stick to about 10 to 12 ounces every half an hour to an hour or so. And it actually works out perfectly if you pair it with how you're eating and making salah, right? You break your fast with about 10 ounces of water. Don't drink a whole gigantic thing of it, just only about 10 ounces. Then by the time you make wudu and you make salah and you sit down and eat, about a half an hour has passed. Drink another 10 ounces. Then you're gonna make Isha probably about an hour after that. Drink another 10 ounces before you make Salah. Then about an hour later, you're going to be making tarweeh, drink another 10 ounces. Then there's the split in the tarweeh prayer, drink another 10 ounces. All of these things occur about a half an hour to an hour apart. So it actually creates a perfect schedule for you to stay hydrated. So that's number one. If you live in some place where it's really hot and you're concerned about sweating all day, then you might actually want to consider electrolyte tablets, which are really easily to find on Amazon. It's just a combination of potassium and sodium. Of course, you can make intentions and effortful of having foods that contain both of those. Avocados are really high in potassium. Adding sea salt to your food is going to make sure that your sodium level stays at its proper amount. So you want to drink water, but also make sure that you're not drinking it all at one time. You want to spread it out about small portions, about 30 minutes to an hour apart from one another. And that should keep you pretty hydrated even throughout your day.
Okay. So ketogenic people, keep doing what you're doing. I assume that Dr. Yasir, you don't want to follow up on the ketogenic diet.
That's fine, I'll pass.
Right. Why don't we go to the next question and we'll have you lead off. Are there any other forms of ibadah that one can do during the blessed month of Ramadan other than salah and Quran recitation?
So actually every single form of ibadah is multiplied in the month of Ramadan, manifold. And that is why most of the scholars even encourage giving zakat in the month of Ramadan, even though technically you can give it any time of the year, as well as zakat al-fitr. Let's not forget about that obligation. So in reality, every action of worship is open. However, there are 3 or 4 that are especially highlighted. Of course, number 1 is the actual act of fasting. Number 2 is the recitation of the Quran. And in fact, in the Quran, when Allah talks about fasting in Ramadan, He mentions the Quran before He mentions fasting. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. The month of Ramadan is when the Quran came down. Then Allah says, whoever is able to fast. So Quran is linked with Ramadan before fasting is linked with Ramadan. So lots of recitation of the Quran. Number 3, the nightly prayer as well. So the nightly prayer is the Taraweeh or Qiyamul Layl. And then number 4 is the act of dua, or invoking Allah and praising Him for our needs. Because in the Quran and in the Sunnah, the month of Ramadan is linked with dua. So for example, right after the verses about the Quran, the very next verse is وَإِذَا سَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. When my servants ask you about me, tell them I am close to them. I respond to the call of their du'as when they invoke me. So let them invoke me and let them pray out to me. And our Prophet ﷺ said that every single day that somebody fasts, every single day, there is a special dua that is never rejected, and that is every day of Ramadan. So these are 4 things that are specifically linked with the month of Ramadan, and any good deed is extra reward in this month.
All right, the next question, I believe is for Sister Mubaraka. The person says, I cannot eat suhoor, but would like to try smoothies this Ramadan for suhoor. What would you recommend to have in my suhoor smoothie? Jazakallah khair.
So if you are going to eat a smoothie in the morning, what I would recommend is that you make sure you include some sort of protein in it. What you don't want to do is have a smoothie that's just fruit and vegetables, because the energy is very temporary. It's going to be digested within 30 minutes. And that means that when you go back to sleep, or by the time Fajr is over, you're going to have no energy to actually go throughout your day. Protein helps keep you full longer, and it takes longer for your body to digest it, so it's giving you energy throughout the entire digestive time. Now, you can do that in a couple of ways. You can add Greek yogurt to your smoothie. You can add a whey protein powder, or even a casein protein powder, which takes a little longer to digest, which is going to give you more sustained energy. So any of those things, having kefir that you add to it, adding tofu to it, all of those things are different things that you can add to a smoothie that's going to give its protein. So lots of greens. My rule for smoothies is that it must contain some type of leafy green, broccoli, kale, some type of leafy green. any fruits that you like, right? Preferably low sugar fruits like berries, and then add a source of protein to it. And that should give you a pretty good sustained suhoor. That's gonna help you at least have energy and not be hungry all day long. We're not gonna avoid ever getting hungry during the day. There's nothing you can eat for suhoor that's gonna keep you from being hungry all day long for 16 hours.
16 hours, no.
But you can eat things that are going to not focus on the hunger, but really focus on the energy, sustaining energy as far into the day as you possibly can.
And don't be fooled by the McDonald's smoothies, okay? Then it's not what we're talking about here. I mean, more sugar than anything else. And
Yes.
if you go with
Low sugar.
if you go with commercial smoothies, that's what you're getting is a bunch of sugar. The next question I have, by the way, our Q&A box is open. So folks, if you have it, and we have about 15 more minutes left. But the next question I have is age-related advice for Ramadan. I'm thinking the two age groups that pop in my mind is the younger people, like Dr. Yasir talked about fasting at 6 years old, and the older people like myself, the people who are special targets of this pandemic, if you will, right? People over 60 years old, and also African Americans like myself and Sister Mubaraka. But do you have any specific, both of you, do you have any specific recommendations that you would get? Particularly, I don't want to leave out the teenagers and the other people, but particularly for the very young and for the people who are older in our society.
I can speak from a legal perspective that the obligation to fast does not begin until one becomes a man or a woman, and that's typically around the age of 13, 14, 15. But that's the obligation. Before this point in time, it is encouraged and recommended to get the child into the spirit of Ramadan. You know, there's nothing obligatory, but however, and when I fasted, it was a very auspicious moment. There was a party thrown. I felt very important. These are all cultural things that are done. As a young child, you feel very special, you know, your first fast. And, you know, it wasn't that difficult. And then when I was 7 years old, I actually fasted the entire month of Ramadan. And it was something that I didn't find that problematic. But again, it depends on the season that you're in, the land that you're in, the timings. It depends on the, you know, your own body and your own culture. It is not obligatory. So it's up to the parents to, you know, make it easy for their children and entice them and encourage them so that they get into the mood. But technically, it's only obligatory when you become a young man, you come of age, basically. And obviously, in any age category, if fasting poses an actual health issue, if you're going to feel so weak that you're going to faint for whatever reason, if it's not possible for the job that you're doing and that is your only source of income, then it doesn't matter at the age that you do have an exemption from the Sharia. And of course, the Quran is explicit about the exemption for those who are not capable of fasting due to old age. And that's something that is very explicit in the Quran, that Allah says that those that are no longer able to fast should feed a poor person in lieu of not fasting for that day. And so at a certain age, it becomes very difficult to fast. What that age is, it varies from person to person. Somebody maybe at the age of 60 would feel very healthy. Another 60-year-old will feel, no, I'm feeling too weak and I'm going to faint if I fast. So it's a personal decision that they have to answer to in front of Allah. It's not something that anybody else can tell them. And once that age comes, then no problem. They simply feed a poor person in lieu of every single day of fasting. And that's basically $7, $8 a day. So it's for the whole month, it's like around $200, $250, just a one-time. And even if they can afford it, if not, then even that is forgiven. So the goal of protecting one's health is more important than the fast. And if the fast is going to be unreasonable to one's health, then one is exempt from fasting.
Sister Mubaraka?
So from a physical aspect, if you are able to fast, so I'll say from a parent's point of view, I have 4 children who are now all young adults. I think that for young children, it's important to really encourage them and make them want to do it and not to force them to do it. If they are not if it's not obligatory upon them because of the Sharia, then you shouldn't force them and make them dislike Ramadan. There's different things that you can do in order to encourage them to, you know, praise them for being a good Muslim, praise them for being a big boy and girl, you know, have them help with iftar. There's different things that you can do. And also just to encourage them even to fast a part of the day, right? So I too started fasting when I was 6, 7 years old. And I can remember before I was fasting the whole day, I would wake up and eat breakfast and then just fast to iftar. Or even my young nieces and nephews, their parents have them to fast maybe from lunch to iftar. So at least they start getting used to, like, this is what it is to fast. For people who are in that middle age category, I don't want to leave them out. And if you are around people who are older, please recognize that it may be more challenging as you get older, and you should try to assist them in any way that you can. For people who are older and you have no reason not to fast, you are going to fast, you have no health reasons that you're not going to fast, and I encourage them to do so. Try to take it easy as far as your responsibilities and your duties to allow you to be able to complete it successfully. In terms of how it really can help us in terms of the pandemic, is that there's lots of research that shows that when you fast, you actually increase your immune system. So one of the things that I have been personally doing since this pandemic has started is I do intermittent fasting every single day on the days that I'm not actually doing an Islamic fast. So I try to go at least 16 or 18 consecutive hours without food. One of the research studies actually showed that when they had people to fast, that their immune cells retreated back into the bone marrow, and the bone marrow fortified them. The researcher described it as supercharging them. And then when the body was when the influenza virus was actually introduced to the body, that the immune cells were able to fight it off with much more vigor, either preventing the person from being sick or significantly reducing the length of time that they were sick. So we know that intermittent fasting actually fights off viruses. It supercharges your immune system. So I would recommend that people actually do. If we have non-Muslims who are actually watching this webinar with us, I encourage them, try the month of Ramadan with us. Worst thing that can happen is you end up healthier at the end of the month, right? So I think that it's something that everybody should really think of it in terms of really not just spiritual, but also the physical benefits of this month, which are immense and vast.
Okay. One of our viewers types in that please explain to people that may have sicknesses such as diabetes not to just fast without speaking with their doctors, especially those who are diabetic. That's absolutely necessary, right?
If you have any diagnosed illness, you should always talk to your doctor before you are doing it. One of the things about having diabetes and fasting, and I have to be honest that it's not impossible to fast if you have diabetes, but one of the effects of fasting is it actually reduces your glucose level. So you can't take your medication at your regular intervals. You must always check your insulin level before you take it, because you actually may not need it. But again, you should talk to your doctor. You should have a plan in place. You should make sure that you're taking your glucose level, meaning your finger prick test, before you take your medication throughout your day. And you want to make sure that you're you are really conscious of how it is affecting you physically. You want your body to be able to adjust in a way that makes it doable for you, and keeping in mind all of the other tips that I gave earlier about making sure you're eating nutrient-dense food. So definitely not just with diabetes, but if you have any other diagnosed illness that you are on medication for, that your doctor has said you have this diagnosis, always talk to your doctor at first, but also be really aware that it's not impossible.
And Dr. Yasir, our religious tradition and law backs this up, of course, right?
Yes, of course. As I explained in the last question as well, that anytime there's a medical issue and there's a worry that fasting is going to exacerbate, it's going to make life uncomfortable or difficult. It's not even a matter of life and death. When it comes to fasting, it's a matter of life becoming difficult beyond what is reasonable to bear. And obviously, if you have a sickness that it does not impact the fast, for example, if you have a weak knee, let's say, for example, right, or a joint issue that generally speaking, is not affected by, exacerbated by the fast, that's a separate issue, no problem. But anytime the fast is going to make your condition worse, even to the point of just making life uncomfortable, you might have a legitimate excuse to not fast. How about if it's going to impair the actual health of, or your even life is at stake, for example, diabetics? So without a question, in that case, fasting is not only not obligatory, it might even be haram to fast if there's a genuine fear of you losing your life. So definitely make sure you avail yourself to your doctor and make sure that you are in a good condition to fast.
So it looks like most of our questions are about physical diet or exercise. One viewer asked, when is it best to exercise during Ramadan, before breaking the fast or after?
So that is a matter of timing. So the best time for you to do cardiovascular exercise, which means if you're going to run, if you're going to ride your bike, if you're going to do, I don't know, a Zumba class, anything that's cardiovascular, you can actually do it anytime during the time of your class for low to moderate, the time of your fast, for low to moderate intensity. When it comes to exercise, there's a couple of things that you want to be aware of. You don't want to exercise within about 2 hours of you eating a full meal. The reason why is because when you eat, your blood flow, your additional blood flow is diverted to your digestive system so that it can digest your food and it can efficiently pull out the nutrients and do all the things that it needs to do in order for you to digest your food. And when you're exercising, your blood flow is diverted to the muscles so that you can efficiently move your muscles and do and have the energy to actually do the workout. If you're eating your suhoor and then an hour later you're trying to do a workout, or even the same thing, you eat iftar and then an hour later you're trying to do a workout, neither one of them are going to be done efficiently. So your digestion is going to slow down. So you're going to end up with digestive problems, right? You're going to feel bloated. You might get gassy. You're not going to feel your digestive system having completed its job, and your muscles are not going to be able to work at its full capacity because some of the blood flow is being tugged into the digestive system. So the important thing is that you wait at least 2 hours after your meal. But when it comes to resistance training or any type of intense training, and I tell people you can determine intense training by, is your muscle sore? If your muscles are going to be sore after that workout, then you created small little tears in the muscle, which is absolutely normal because that's how your muscles build. But in order to build those tears, your muscles need the most bioavailable amino acids, which normally comes from the food that you eat. You have about a 2-hour window after an intense workout or a resistance training workout to get in nutrients. So the best time for you to do resistance training is going to be within 2 hours of you actually doing breaking your fast and eating iftar, so that you can consume protein in order to repair those muscles that you just worked. But for cardiovascular or for low intensity is things that you know that's a little bit below where you would normally work out and you're not going to be that sore, and it's all dependent on your particular fitness level and exercise history, then you can pretty much do that any time of your day or your evening that's not within that 2 to 3 hour window after you've eaten a complete meal.
Okay, so it's time for us to wrap up. I have one question that's really a nutrition question. Then I'm going to ask Dr. Yasir to close with what he thinks people should emphasize as most important going into Ramadan. And then I'm going to ask Sister Mubaraka to do the same. Then I'm going to talk about our next webinar, what it's going to be about, and give a little pitch, of course, for the TISA. And then I'm going to ask Dr. Yasir to close us out with dua. So we'll start with the question first, our last question. This is from a person that says, I usually make a dish for suhoor of lentil and quinoa mixed. Is this a good thing to eat for suhoor?
So whether or not it's a good thing to eat is completely dependent on you and your diet and your health history. In general, lentil and quinoa paired together is, if you're trying to get protein in, it's kind of a redundancy. Quinoa is one of the very few grains that actually have a complete amino acid profile. So that's actually a great form of a vegetable-based protein if you want to have that as a protein. Lentils are absolutely fine if they agree with you and you're looking to stay away from animal protein, then that's absolutely fine for you to have those together. Again, good, and I even say healthy is all relative. Whether it's good or bad or healthy is all relative per individual. It really depends on your health history and what your particular goals are. You have to eat according to your goals, not really according to whether or not it's healthy for someone else.
Okay. So Dr. Yasir, so as we wrap up, what do you think is the most important thing that people should focus on entering Ramadan?
Well, I'm going to speak specifically about this year's Ramadan because there seems to be, understandably, a lot of worry, apprehension, maybe even a bit of a depression, like this Ramadan is not going to be, as good as the previous Ramadans. We're going to miss out. And I'd like to, state, as I've been saying for the last week or so, that that's the wrong attitude to have. Rather, we should flip the script and literally think that Allah is gifting us the best Ramadan that we've possibly ever had in our lives. That we have to approach this Ramadan with the right spirit in mind. That we have to thank Allah that we actually have more time because we're not going to be stuck in traffic. We have more energy because we're not going to be in work 8-9 hours a day. We're at home more often, so we have time for tilawah. We have our own schedules in our hands, so we can wake up in the last third of the night. We're not going to other people's houses, and so we can eat healthy, and we're not going to be overstuffed with food, etc., etc. So there's actually so many hidden blessings that we need to flip the script and literally think that Allah is giving us the opportunity, because He really is. This is an opportunity for this Ramadan to be the best Ramadan of our lives that we've ever had. So that's the spirit that we need to approach this Ramadan with. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it our best Ramadan.
Ameen. Sister Mubaraka, what do you think people should emphasize as they enter this blessed month of Ramadan?
I think that one of the things is in terms of health that people should emphasize is really reducing the portion sizes and the amount of carbohydrates and sugars that they're eating. One of the disadvantages that of Ramadan is that we don't make good plans for our iftar, and we're not planning healthy meals. And again, I echo what Sheikh Yasir said, is that this is an opportunity for us to plan, to eat healthy, to really focus on those things without the excuses of we had to go to the masjid and we didn't have control over the food, or we were invited to a friend's house and we were giving, 5 different desserts. All of those excuses are gone because, and I emphasize this not just because we know it's good to eat fruits and vegetables, but the way that it's going to specifically affect your ibadah is when you are eating lots of carbohydrates and lots of sweets and sugar, it is going to spike your energy level and your insulin level. But that only lasts for about 15-20 minutes, and then you have a really big crash where you're really tired. And that tiredness is going to prevent you from having energy to do your ibadah late at night. Not only that, but cut out the constant eating like throughout the night, because it's going to help you sleep better. Similar to what I just described about your blood flow and your energy being pulled between exercise and digestion, the same thing happens when you're asleep. We have a reduced sleep schedule, so we should try to look to improve the quality of that sleep. And that can happen only when our body is not trying to digest the third serving that we had at midnight after iftar, and we're trying to sleep on a full stomach, and you're sleeping but you're waking up exhausted because your body did not have the energy that it needed to divert to actually restore and renew your body. Instead, it was busy digesting the third serving that you had, or the extra cake and the cookie that you had before you lay down. So take that stuff out. Really try to not just focus on a nutrient-dense meal, but make it nutrient-dense iftar and then leave it at that. Have tea later on, have water later on. Don't eat throughout your night all the way until it's time to go to bed. So really focusing on the quality of your food, pushing it up, and the quantity, pushing it down.
Okay, so both of our esteemed guests have asked us to flip the script, as it were. Let's not do what we normally do in the past. Let's have a new attitude and some new behavior for this Ramadan. Okay, so we're wrapping up now. I want to say something about the Center for Ethical and Effective Organizational Leadership in our post-pandemic workshops. The kind of knowledge and practical advice that you find in these two presenters is what we try to do at the Islamic Seminary of America. We try to find people who are deeply knowledgeable, but also have frontline experience. And you're looking at two people who do. And if you look across our faculty, that's what you'll find. And if you look at our workshops that we're going to try to do, we're going to try to roll them out in the post-pandemic world, to get people to think a little bit differently about this pandemic and think about ways of improving themselves as leaders and improving their organizations. Ibrahim, you want to put up the slide for the next TISA talks? All right, so the next TISA talks is called Counseling and Cross-Cultural Communication. It's actually named after a course that we're offering in the summer by the same name. And it's a course that's going to be co-taught by 3 people. Again, people who have both deep knowledge about the topic and have frontline experience. That's what we tend to do. And you'll notice that many times we'll have an individual teach, as we had Dr. Abbott, who's very deep in fundraising and humanitarian principles, and Sheikh Yasir teach by themselves. But we often do team teaching as well, that are often men and women. And we do that for a reason, because we want to model the kind of leadership that we want to see in our community. Anyway, this course is scheduled, the course is scheduled in June, I believe. But the TISA talks is scheduled for May 27th, and I think the links are live for it at 8:30 Eastern Daylight Time. And yep, they have a link there. And it will be myself, Dr. Rania Awad, who is a psychiatrist at Stanford University, also Khalil Center, and is a frontline person, and she teaches doctors and psychiatrists. She's a psychiatrist. And the other person is Dr. Tahir, who is the head of our admissions committee. He's on our advisory board, but he's also a psychiatrist who's a frontline person. And so, and of course myself, I've been doing mainly with my wife, Martina, pastoral counseling over the past 20 years. And so you have that mix again of people who have both the knowledge, the conceptual knowledge, and the deep frontline knowledge. And so if you want to learn more about that course, you'll join us on May 27th. We're not sure we're going to have it online or in person as of yet, but inshallah by May 27th, we'll have a good idea. And of course, you can find all of this information at the TISA website, which is islamicseminary.us. And Brother Tariq reminds me that I should tell you that the phone line is open, 214-484-1309, 214-484-1309. Of course, you can donate at our website, but in case you're interested and getting on the phone and talking to him about what we're doing. We'd like to thank our presenters, mashallah, very interesting dynamic. For those of you who came late, or if you want your friends to share some of the insights that both the dean and Sister Mubaraka, it will be on our YouTube channel. It will be open to the public on our YouTube channel under the name of it, and that's where you'll be able to find it, inshallah. So we thank both of you, and we pray to Allah Ta'ala that He accepts this as part of our good deeds and joins us together in Jannah. Would you give us a closing dua, Dr. Yasir, please?
We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to get to the month of Ramadan in health and iman, and to fast the month of Ramadan, and to stand in qiyam in the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us to be amongst those upon whom Ramadan finishes with all of our sins forgiven, and all of our fasts accepted, and all of our recitation raised up. We ask Allah to be amongst those who are standing its nights of Ramadan and standing on Laylatul Qadr. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be with those whose du'as are accepted. We ask Allah to lift from us this plague, and we ask Allah that we resume our lives with even more iman and even more health and even more renewed in our taqwa. We ask Allah to guide us and to guide others through us. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبد محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
Assalamu alaikum.
السلام عليكم.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.